If you look at India today, in fact, I was very struck by Peter's comment about Eric Fromm's fear of freedom, because we've had, as you said, dizzying change. India has transformed itself dramatically in the 72 years since its independence. And in the last generation in particular, there's been the astonishingly rapid movement of IT in modern communications, a once protectionist economy becoming much more globalized, dramatic changes in politics, in caste relations, in all sorts of phenomena that in other societies could even have triggered off a revolution.
Shashi, the theme that Peter was talking about, the pace of change and the way in which these global economic geopolitical shifts are affecting our sense of identity. I mean, in one sense, you might think if you were a young Indian at the moment, you would be filled with an extraordinary sense of self-confidence. You know, think of what you're going to see over the next 50 years as your country accedes, as opposed to we in the declining West. And yet you have written kind of persuasively on the oddity of the Hindu nationalism that is taking hold of India under Modi, which on the one hand does express a certain kind of self-confidence and pride in India, but on the other is very anxious and angry and insecure about India's place in the world. And I wonder, could you, for those who perhaps are less familiar with this, give a kind of sense of how this issue of the pace of change and the anxiety it brings is playing out in India's dominant culture?
Absolutely. I mean, it's. By the way, it's interesting that you've got all three panelists have had great-grandparents born in India, but only one of us actually lives there and is trying to make a go of it. So there's a challenge. But if you look at India today, in fact, I was very struck by Peter's comment about Eric Fromm's fear of freedom, because we've had, as you said, dizzying change. India has transformed itself dramatically in the 72 years since its independence. And in the last generation in particular, there's been the astonishingly rapid movement of IT in modern communications, a once protectionist economy becoming much more globalized, dramatic changes in politics, in caste relations, in all sorts of phenomena that in other societies could even have triggered off a revolution, but in India somehow has been absorbed so far within the national consensus. Or so we thought. And then suddenly here we have, as of 2014, the rise of a party which has never subscribed to that national consensus, under a leader whose ideology is fundamentally different from what India has actually seen in office before. So, our nationalist movement did not divide on ideological lines. When we were fighting for freedom from the British, it wasn't that India, the nationalists, divided between Marxists and capitalists or liberals and socialists. It divided over a very simple principle. Should religion be the determinant of nationhood? And one set of people said, yes, it should be, and that was the idea of Pakistan, and they created a country in which one religion would dominate. And everybody else, led by Mahatma Gandhi, said, no, religion cannot determine our nationhood. Our nationhood embraces everybody. 3,000, 4,000 years of recorded Indian civilization. We've had all these great influences from around the world. Every religion has a home here. And we have fought for the freedom of all these people, and we will write a constitution to safeguard the equal rights of all these people. And this was the idea of India, and we celebrated it and lived it for 7 decades. And because we were a very contentious but thriving democracy, it was possible for people like me to stand up and say, look, we have differences of caste, of creed, of color, of culture, of consonant, of conviction, of costume and custom. But we still rally around a consensus. And that consensus was on the simple principle that in a country like India, you don't really need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. Now that principle, those ground rules are for the first time being questioned by those in power. And they have a very different vision of India. They see this as a Hindu nation. They want to make it a Hindu Rashtra in their vocabulary. They are, in many ways, articulating an impatience with the inadequacy of democratic India to cope with the rapid forces of change you mentioned, James. And because it's convenient to find scapegoats for failures, or if not failures, at least disappointments in terms of earlier aspirations. My big worry with this lot in power is that you will see both a nativist reassertion of a quote-unquote authentically Hindu ethos in what has so far thrived as a diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, and that you will also see perhaps a dangerous willingness to dispense with elements of democracy.
If you've enjoyed the conversation that you just heard, do subscribe to our channel for much more.